I'm Liam Milan, and in this video we're going to look at Ableton Live's filter delay device. So filter delay is quite different and unique to the other echoes and delays available within Ableton Live. It's quite an old device, so it's not changed much over the last few editions of Ableton Live, but it's still useful because it has 3 different delay lines which can be panned separately and also be filtered with a bandpass filter separately too. So let's load up a filter delay onto this arpeggiated synth sound, and let's listen to it raw with no treatment. And then with the filtered delay. And let's have a look at how that all works. So these are our 3 different delay lines that we have here. And by default, they're panned to be a left hard panned filtered delay, which is the L filter here. They're panned for a stereo filtered delay, which is this one here. And then the right filter delay, which is panned to the right as well. This is the bandpass filter, which allows us to limit the frequencies available on that particular delay line. To accompany that, we do have a dry control, which by default is actually lower than the delay line. So part of the reason why that sounded the way it did was it's actually the signals being overwhelmed by the delays and the dry was actually at a lower volume. So something to watch out for with filter delay, if you get into using it, is to, based on what you want to do, choose whether you want the delays to be louder or quieter. I often find myself with a default setting, dropping down the actual delayed versions, having the dry higher, and then going to save that as my default preset. So every time I load it, it's a bit more to what I would expect it to do behavior-wise. So traditional delay line controls are here. We have a sync option, and we can choose the actual measurements of the sync. If you want to get a little bit more of a groove and a little bit more detail, things not being mechanically perfect, you do have a percentage of swing before or after the actual synchronized time, which is quite nice to create differences between the different delay lines. Then we also have the millisecond based delay time as well, which I'll put into an application soon after this first example. So the first thing I'm going to go for right now is to just take out all the delays and slowly introduce one at a time and show you how the filtering system is really powerful on this. So I'll bring in the left-based delay line first. So my working method with this has always been to decide on the rhythm I want to have on one of these delay lines first. Then based on the sound or within the mix with all the other sounds happening, find the spot that delay line can happily sit within the mix with everything else. So the bandpass has an XY control. You can see there's the frequency position there and then the width of the actual bandpass there. I tend to use the XY, but you can punch in numbers or drag those dials there. And then as I'm listening to it, I'll just sweep that around to find somewhere where it fits amongst the rest of the track. So I'm just going to unsolo this for a minute. And then let's sweep this and find a spot for that delay line. So that rhythm works really well on the left there with a sort of a lower mid-range filter position. Let's go for the right-hand bass delay. And let's see the rhythm's right for that one, I suppose, first. And it will be in context, so I'm not going to mute the first delay line. I want to make sure that there's a positive interaction of this new delay line and the first delay line. So let's just experiment with the timing here. Now in this context, I might actually go for the same synchronized time, but let's use these percentage offsets. So I'm actually making this one slightly earlier and this one slightly later. And let's just change the level, or at least that right-hand side, because I could hear that that was a little bit lower than the first delay line. And introduce the third delay line. Get that to work in context of what I've already established here. I'm just going to solo the track just so I can hear the details a little bit better. Okay, now I want to choose the duration factor of this, so this is where the feedback controls come into place. So let's just reduce them down to be just a single repeat. So that third delay line, the one in the middle, the L and R delay, I've decided to put it high up in the frequency band so it creates a shimmer effect. It's very immediate after the dry signal that it's happening, so it feels like it's more like a sort of an air sound that drifts over the whole bit, whereas the other two delay lines are allowing the stereo information to be there just to create some more interest in the sound. So that's how I would recommend going about tuning in filtered delay in this context where you want to create delays that have these different frequency properties over time. The next way of doing this would be what I call a mono-friendly Haas effect. So the Haas effect, H-A-A-S, is our perception of stereo in the terms of it being spatial. If we hear the same signal, but we hear the signal on the left speaker a fraction before the signal on the right speaker, up to around about 30 milliseconds of difference in time, we'll perceive those two separate delayed sounds as one, but we'll perceive them as space. Anything beyond that, we hear like an actual kind of panning effect, and we hear that it's two separate sounds. And we could do something similar with the filtered delay, but the benefit of the filtered delay is we can do two delayed versions of the signal on the left and the right, but choose that they are only in certain frequency areas. So we'll create a sense of stereo, but we'll only fill up certain parts of the mix with that sense of stereo. Another aspect of the Haas effect, which can sometimes have a negative connotation in your mix, is the Haas by definition is a delayed version on the left and the right that's identical. It's just the time that's different between the two. And what you get when you combine two signals with one slightly after the other, if they're identical and you play it in mono, so you put them together and play them through the same part of the mix, you end up with the two things fighting off each other and you lose some of the frequency content and therefore the color changes and so on as well. So the Haas effect is great for stereo width, but it does have a compromise when you play your mix in mono. Doing it this way with a filtered delay means you can keep the original dry signal in place and have a slightly delayed left signal and a slightly delayed right. And because you choose which frequencies they belong in, not all of the frequencies, it has less of a negative impact when it's folded down to mono. So let's try that now. We've got a clap sound for the main drop of this track. And I'm going to grab filter delay. And again, by default, it's not necessarily going to give me what I want. So I'm just going to turn off all the delay lines so I don't get confused by the busyness of this device by default. And we've just got the dry signal, so we definitely want that. Let's go for the left-hand signal. We want it to be a fraction, remember, up to 30 milliseconds. So I'm turning it into the millisecond base time, taking the synchronization off. And let's just put it broadband to start with so I can hear all the frequencies of that left panned delay. So without, just turn the volume down to 0 for that one. And then if we limit the frequency range, that's our left delay created. So that is 14 milliseconds after. So let's change this one to roughly double that, just so we have an equal sense of timing between the left and the rights. And then reduce that one to the equivalent of what that one's at, which is -1. So that's at -1 and that's at -1. And then let's just change the filter position. So the delays are slightly different time, but then also the frequency content can be slightly different too. Take the feedback off. And let's just rebalance these. So it's a subtle thing. Once you've got it dialed in and you've got it the way you set it, pull the volume down and rebalance it so it's not over the top. So we're looking for stereo enhancement over complete tonal change here. So let's listen to this in context of the main drop. So without the filter delay. And with. So you can hear there, it makes a big difference in terms of, one, the stereo spread, and in this case, because I've gone for a bandpass filter on those delay lines that's quite high up, it's also increased the top end presence of the sound as well. So that's been Ableton Live's filter delay, how we can set it up for long moving filtered delay lines, up to 3 of them, and then also how we can use it for tighter stereo placement treatments by doing our mono-friendly Haas style technique.